uh, the things that were enjoyable, like punching the punching bag or walking through the forest, the mind would instantly put a role on us. Like, when I was punching
Yeah,
the
an
punching bag, I
archetype.
would just instantly imagine myself around, like in an arena, everyone watching me as I punch some dude, or walking through the forest. Walking through the prehistoric jungles of the dinosaurs around us. Like that is that vibe that we're in a story, that there's a role that we're playing,
Yeah,
that we're
I mean,
acting out here.
honestly, that is a really good way of putting it because it is just like basically whenever we used to think about it, it used to be this disembodied form of like love, like God is just pure love. And then what you find out is there is no part of God which is pure love other than conceptually. What God is God is each individual movement. All God knows, all God is the love of the movement. Every individual life, every individual thought texture, there is going to be a task. I broke it down into words, and they were just like basically it came down to like timing a window. That was the thing that I found was like trying to be expressed, was it's like all of reality is just a set of quick time windows where whether it's a conversation and you have to put together the right string of words in the next 3 seconds, or you're a rabbit who's being chased by a tiger and you have to duck to the left right as he pounces in and tries to bite you. It's like all of reality is just a set of these quick time windows in which you must make the right decision. And it's like that right decision, that moving forward, it's like that is all of reality. It is just decisions. It's just things. It's all things. And it's like you basically what I'm trying to say is that Buddhist idea, or even our previous idea of disembodied love, where it's like you're trying to just love everything regardless of the action, it just doesn't work. It isn't practical. You need the love of the action, not just the love, but the love of doing. It's a different thing. I don't know how to explain it, but anyways, I'll explain this, which will help. Is I found out a way to write it into the story that makes smiling happen naturally, where you don't even need to think about smiling, because smiling used to be in step 2, and I'll go over which part's step 2 later, but smiling used to be a part of step 2. Now smiling is a part of step 1, because I realized how you get smiling is you account for thought textures. And now what that means is in the in the initial phase, whenever you're doing your script, right? Basically whenever you are simulating God, you can simulate God from the perspective of the orb, which is a sort of humanist perspective, or even you can simulate God as the machine. But if you only think of it as other reality, other like quantum physical realities, you're going to come out with this still human perspective of God. If you only think of God as like other self-reflective entities, which is easy to fall into the habit because of course we're self-reflective entities, then you're not going to have the right picture of God. You need to account in the simulacrum, in the oozeulacrum. You need to account in that step. You need to in that step account for thought textures and basically understand that God isn't just the infinite. God isn't just like your idea of the infinite, which is just like more matter. God is infinite thought textures. And once you account for that, the smile is natural. It's like once you account for things outside of matter, the smile almost becomes necessary, because it's like there's a sense of humor about it, because it's like you've zoomed so far out that you can't even hold perspective. You can't even hold any sense of normalcy or any sense of like this is good and this is bad. You zoom out so far once you've accounted for thought textures, this whole relativity completely collapses in on itself. And the way you do that with the story is you literally just imagine the machine story, but you imagine this specific, like literally whenever I imagine the story, I'm not imagining the whole story. I'm imagining this one thing, which is God, or me, whichever way you want to put this, God being me, realizing in this moment that I am every other thought texture which could possibly exist. And in that moment in which I realize I am every other thought texture which could possibly exist, and I realize what that means for this reality, what that means for these things around me, that's when I become God. That is God. That's all God is. All God is, the closest approximation to God, is an entity, a mover, a Zix which realizes that it is also every other thought texture and realizes exactly what that means in relation to what he's currently experiencing. And that is God. And you can do that with this story. You can, it's the exact same thing, Athenos, except you're just taking the last step, which is no, become nothing, become completely lost within the infinite. It's like that, except you're capable of keeping a thing you're capable of keeping an identity, but the identity is based around being the simulation, being it's an identity which is based around being everything and understanding exactly what being everything means. And now it's interesting. It's also very similar to a vibe check, because I'm getting concepts like this. Okay, and of course I'm getting these in much more abstract ways. I'm not getting these in words. I'm getting these as packages, parts of massive other realizations, little pieces of other realizations, but I can distill these down to you in words. Things like, I am lucky because, right, I am an American. I am lucky because I'm Ashton. I am lucky because I am this individual person experiencing this individual reality. I am experiencing the thought texture, the exact, specific, beautiful, detailed thought texture of what it is like to be on Earth, of what it is like to be a human being who understands what God is and has to try and teach all the other human beings what God is. And that is so beautiful. Even if I never succeed, the struggle, that is so beautiful. What a beautiful thought texture in the sea of thought textures. All of these little breakdowns, these micro breakdowns, they get completely swallowed up in this one massive breakdown, this one massive torrential sea of just awe that hits you whenever you fully understand what this is. Whenever you think about the story in that way, and you are trying to simulate exactly, okay, I'm God. I am God. I am God within the simulation. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that feel like? What does it feel like to be God in a simulation? What does it feel like to be the simulator and be in a simulacrum and understand what that feels like? And that is oozeulacrum. That's what the thought texture of oozeulacrum is. It's basically simulacrum, which is just the idea of being the computer, but the ooze part is specifically accounting for framework ooze. So basically, all I'm saying, all oozeulacrum means is you are being the simulacrum, which you could also say is orbify, but it's specifically with the thought texture of the story. So it's simulacrum, which is being the infinite, and then the other step is ooze, which is to understand that the infinite is thought textures. So it's to understand that there is infinite backdrop of thought textures against your reality. That is what oozeulacrum means. I'll go over that one more time. Oozeulacrum is to understand that there is an infinite backdrop of thought textures against this reality. So that feeling of essentially comparing this against infinity is done beautifully by oozeulacrum, and that's only step one of this massively intricate framework. So, any questions?
No questions. Continue.
Okay, so that is O1. And now what the 1 stands for. So that's just O. So now what the 1 stands for. So literally, that was the first letter of O1 Bhgs2wh. But some of the other letters are nowhere near as time consuming. So anyways, to continue. So now you have 1. And that stands for slingshot 1. Because after you do oozeulacrum, after you begin to attempt to simulate exactly what I was saying before, when you do that, what's going to happen is you're going to reach a slingshot point. After you get to a certain point, after you get to a certain point of realization, you're going to be hurled back into reality, and you're going to get what we used to call God's grasp, where your vision becomes exceptionally clear, and you're capable of appreciating detail of reality. And it's like, all of those things happen. All of the slingshot things happen, where it's like you can smell better, and you can see better, and your mind feels super clear. All of the classic slingshot signs, those happen. Okay, so that's when you know that you've completed step 1. So step 1 is to run oozeulacrum until you get a slingshot. That's step 1. Now we're moving into step 2. So now you have Bhgs. And now this is all one thing. This is black hole gravitational slingshot. And so what this is black hole has taken on a new meaning. So let me think of what black hole used to be, because I've explained black hole to you several times and it's a new thing. So let me think of what black hole used to be from your perspective. Honestly, you just tell me. There have been lots of renditions of black hole. What is the last one you remember? What is the one that I was
The last
talking
one I
about?
remember was like orbify, black hole, and then the white hole, and then that goes in the wormhole into heaven.
Yeah. Yeah, so black hole used to be basically black hole used to just be an attempt at a slingshot, where it's like you were trying to, which is kind of just what it is now. Okay, well, Black hole changes are going to be more complicated for me to explain. Hold on, yeah, I'm just gonna have to meditate on this for a second. I'm just gonna explain what it means. Fuck what it used to mean. Okay, so essentially, imagine. Okay, so used to, if you remember, orbify every layer. Do you remember that framework where it was like you were specifically there were different layers, and you were trying to capture all of the layers, and that's when a slingshot would happen.
Yeah.
That's
You're
kind of
talking
what
about.
this one is like. But this one is, first of all, you have no diversification of layers. So if you remember, that was my problem with that framework, and that's actually why I scrapped it in the end, was I didn't want to promote the idea of layers, because to say there are different layers promotes the idea that there is difference. And as soon as you say that to a normie, their brain's going to get all scrambled, and they're not going to understand, you know what I mean? Like, you're trying to posit metaphysical non-difference, and then you're positing difference in the framework. Like, it's not good.
Yeah. Be
Um,
careful with the wording.
Exactly, and that's why I eventually just scrapped it. But so now black hole, after I scrapped it, I basically rediscovered it on accident. And so essentially, it's you are you do suck in every layer, but it's okay. All right, I'm gonna have to go back to sub one. Damn, we're gonna have to slip sub one in like the brink of all of our audience, but it's all right. I'm just gonna have to refer back. I'm just gonna have to revert to like gay language. All right, let's see. It's like hugging reality. Okay, it's like black hole is literally like you are trying to pull reality into you. It's like it's like you. So you understand, right, through O1. You now understand that all thought textures are perfect and that you are God in a sea of thought textures, and you understand that these thought textures around you are bizarrely abstract at the least, and at least sort of beautiful. But then what black hole is black hole is whenever you cannot get enough. It's like you just you're on one hand you're completely satisfied, but on the other hand you're not satisfied because you just want to just eat reality. You just want to just consume every moment. And like it's just like the only definition, the only way for me to describe this is that feeling of sub one. Whenever you're sitting up on the swing on the mountain and you just love reality and you're just hugging every moment. You know what I mean? And it's just like it's just beautiful, and you want it. Just it. Not anything in particular. You just want this. Everything that's surrounding you. To be alive, to be in this moment, to feel these thought textures, to be this person in this sector of infinity. And I'm explaining it horribly because that's not what it's like. You aren't thinking about those things. You aren't thinking. This isn't a framework in that sense. This is like an action. Like the only way I know how to explain these frameworks, like the black holes, are like directional inputs, because it is literally like so. Okay, so to explain this, black hole is now what white hole used to try to be. Back when I used to try to explain white hole to you, white hole used to be to try and push into experience. Do you remember me trying to say that? Whereas I used to, yeah,
Yeah.
white hole is when you push into experience so hard that there's nothing between you and experience. Remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, what black hole is it's like the opposite, but it's also the same thing, where it's like instead of pushing into reality so hard you become one with it, it's like you're pulling reality into you so hard you become one with it. It's like you are just pulling every little sensory data, every little sensory detail, every and I mean that is really what it is. It's the detail. It's like you are honing in on every, like when I'm riding my dirt bike, I'm like feeling my body and I'm feeling like the dirt under my tires, and I can just feel the
But yeah, it's like
detail.
you lose the separation between you and your body, and everything else becomes just a part of your perception, and that like
Absolutely.
inherently just gives it that extra
But
bit
but but
of
the thing
awareness
is,
on it.
I always understood that. I always understood that what's happening is you're losing the distinction between you and the surroundings. But the issue is, I used to think you push into it, and I can fully understand why I came to that conclusion, because that's what it feels like. Whenever you get to the point where you are one, it feels like you have pushed into experience, because it feels like you are one with experience. So what your brain would say to you is, well, now you have become experience. But what's really happening is you are pulling in experience so much that experience becomes you, and that is so. It's just so much better explanation definition because it's so much more accurate to what's actually happening. You are becoming reality. You are God. You are the thought textures. Reality is becoming you. You are becoming one thing. You are
Yeah,
sucking
but
reality in.
before it was the mind, from the mind's perspective, it was thinking that external thing I am. So I am progressing onto that external thing, but really it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, and the difference in understanding that is the difference in running the framework. Because used to, I could understand what white hole was, and sometimes I could get it. Do you remember how frustrated I was when you guys were here? That was like one of the worst framework experiences I've ever had. Where okay, it wasn't. I don't want to put it that way. It was one of the most. It was one of the most work I put into a framework. It was the longest time I've spent on the horizon of a framework without feeling the success. It was like I could understand what Whitehole was doing. I just couldn't understand how to catalyze it
Yeah, I
into the
remember
framework.
that era.
Yeah, it was just too weak, where I
That
just
was
kept
fun.
flip-flopping the definitions and couldn't get it. Well, now I finally fucking get it. And it's, instead of pushing in, you're pulling in. And instead of pushing out, you're pulling in. And you after you pull in so hard, after you become God, you realize that it's all just perfect thought textures, and that you and the thought texture are the same, and you pull them into the point where there's no distinction between you and the thought textures, all right? That is black hole gravity slingshot, all right? That. So whenever you suck it in so much that you get another slingshot. So there's actually two slingshots
What
for
is
this
the
framework. What?
Was there another thing called slingshot? Or
Yeah, yeah.
is
So,
it
so yeah, there was the S1, or yeah, there's the
Mm.
one, which is so right. So there's oozeulacrum, and then there's one because oozeulacrum has a slingshot.
Can
Oozeulacrum.
you write them down?
Okay, I'll put it on the map here. Hold on. Okay, well, let me erase that for some reason. Anyways, so you want to see. Okay, so you have O1, O1bhgs2. Okay, so that's how far we've
Mm.
gotten so far. Now there is one more thing after that, but we'll get into that in a second. So O, that's oozeulacrum, right?
Right.
1, that's S1, slingshot 1. All right? So oozeulacrum has its own slingshot where you're going to get that what?
Oh, I'm just laughing at the all these slingshots.
Yeah, it's become so complex. But when you actually run it, it's so simple. I don't know how to explain that. Anyways, so you have slingshot 1, and then you have BH, which stands for black hole, with gravitational slingshot. So the numbers are what the slingshots are. Basically, you can just think of the letters. The letters stand for frameworks, but the numbers stand for slingshots. So you have O, which is the framework which leads to the slingshot 1. Then you have BHGS, which is the framework which leads to slingshot 2. Um, so each of those have their own slingshot. And anyways, the last step, right? The final thing. So are any questions there? So that's step 1, step 2.
No.
Now we have step 3, the final step. And step 3 is incredibly simple and incredibly hard to explain. Step 3, which is in the bottom left corner here, is WH, white hole. And white hole is literally just the name for whenever you run them together. And this is there because every other framework that I've ever done, it begins to turn into a slop where I start to think I can condense the 2 steps into 1 step in which I can understand the thought texture. And after I get the thought texture, I'll be able to run it without any steps. And then I can just start up whenever I want. And then what happens is eventually now I don't have individual steps and things change. And then the framework collapses into the sea of frameworks and it's lost and it all falls apart. And what Whitehole is there to basically do, you don't even need to think about white hole as a step because it really isn't anything except whenever you're running both of them at the same time. That's what white hole means. White hole is whenever you're running O and BHGS at the same time. And specifically, you do it in the order which is laid out there. You begin with oozeulacrum until you get the first slingshot. Then you run black hole, gravity slingshot, until you get the second slingshot, and then you will be at Whitehole. You don't need to do anything different to get to Whitehole. It's just once you run step 2, you will immediately be transitioned into step 3, which is not different. It is just the name for when you've run both step 1 and step 2. And also, you need a name for it because it's the level you'll be at the most. Step 3 is the level that you'll be at most of the time. Hopefully, you know what I mean, depending on how good you are with the framework.
Final result.
Yeah, exactly. Step 3 is just the step you want to be at. The first 2 steps are running it. The last step is when it's being run. Starting it and then running it. That's the difference between step 1 and 2 and step 3. But so yeah, that's what it is. I mean, we can get it much more fleshed out, and I can explain it much better. But as you can see, that we got a beast on our hands right here. This is a hell of a framework.
Certainly. I think that the designer in me can see a simpler mode of communication of this of labeling it. But I see for now it is very good.
Yeah. The thing is, though, is you need a very mathematical language for frameworks. They need, like, obviously, you also need to be able to just explain them to normal people, and we need to get that too. But for like the intricacies of running them for ourselves and saving them, bookmarking them in a way where we know they can't disappear, in that sense, which is the most important sense, they need to be in this extremely linear mathematical language where it's like there are no mistakes. Like in every letter, there's packed a double meaning of different lessons that it's trying to teach you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, or the thought textures are precise, just like actual mathematics.
Yeah. It really is just trying to apply like mathematical language to the mind, which I'm trying to learn more about math now. Math's kind of interesting. For the first time in my life, I kind of like math. It really is so baffling. They don't just try and teach things like they are, which are these beautiful, beautiful like ways of understanding and interacting with our world, and instead they try to just like drill them into your fucking head and make you hate them as much as possible. It's so baffling.
They do it, and as our society is controlled by the left brain, they show you all these different things. They don't tell you how they're interconnected and interweaved, and how they all show that the universe is one interconnected cosmos. But they're just taught math is the math part of the universe, and there's the science part of it, and there's the other parts of it, and it's all separated and whatever. But it's not taught that that's like actually the reality that you live and breathe in. Or at least it's not communicated well enough.
No, it is not. No, the fuck it is not. But so yeah, now me and you, we need to get down to the brass tacks of converting this into conceivable language for other people. So you were saying the designer in you wants to simplify it. Yeah, the designer in you needs to get on that. But the designer in both of us. That's the next task. And also, the first video we're doing, it's going to be a vocabulary video. So basically, what we need to do is we need to record mock videos until we have basically we need to have a mock video for every word. And what I mean by mock video is just a video which is going to get uploaded on the second channel, not the first channel. It's going to be a garbage type video where we're not putting lots of effort into it. We're literally just making a video with no cuts, no edits, no nothing. Just a video on each word so that we know we have a concrete definition. And then after that, we'll move on to making our first good video, which will be a video which is edited, which we do put effort in, and that will be us going over every single word that we've ever created in one video. Because that is the first thing that we need. We need a set of vocabulary that people can look at and be like, listen, this is a 10-minute video. This will teach you every word that we've created. Watch this, and you don't need to worry about us explaining it in every video. That's what we need first.
Yeah, sounds good. Also, we should schedule on the horizon soon.
Jock.
A jock call.
Yes, we should. We should just go ahead and text him right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go ahead and do that. I don't want to risk the call. Doing anything shitty.
When should we do that? Should I just tell him as soon as possible, or like?
Yeah. Just tell him as soon as possible. All right. While you do that, let me meditate real quick. I'm gonna think about if there's anything else about this framework I want to say.
All right. Do you think you could write the equation down with like a short description of each of the things?
Yeah. Yeah. So another interesting thing is it's very similar, the initial heavens and hells idea, to the modern day framework ooze idea, where it's like you get this. I don't know. The confidence is the word that I go to. It's not the right word. It's but this framework is capable of doing things no other framework I've ever made have been capable of doing. Like every other one's been like a slight step up. This one has made me able to do things like, first of all, my social anxiety, which I've always had, even with frameworks, that frameworks have been able to cure them practically, but not fully. Like in other words, I still had social anxiety and doing things like, for instance, here's an example. I went to the garbage dump the other day. I had to pay this bitch $50, and she said like pull forward, let me get your license plate. And to me, I need like autistic clarification, so I was like, just pull right there, because like it's like, well, I don't want to pull up too far, that way you can't see my license plate. What if there's a designated license plate area? I've never been to this garbage dump before. Perhaps I need to pull up to the license plate area, and she hasn't properly given me directions. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like this neurotic autistic form of needing specific clarification that typically, like,
Yeah.
I would either ask her and not feel good about it, or pull forward without asking and then be wondering, did I make the right decision? And it's just this neurotic mess where it's
Yeah, I
like
know
framework.
exactly what you mean.
Yeah, and it's like frameworks can they can curb it, but they never got rid of it. Well, this framework does. It just gets rid of it. Like the thoughts in my mind now when I was talking to that bitch at the dump were like, it was just funny. It was just like, literally, it was exactly what it would feel like if you were God and you had experienced unlimited hells and unlimited heavens, and there was this bitch at the garbage dump telling you to pull forward, and you were wondering about your license plate. You know what I mean? It was like, it just felt exactly like it should, and it was just funny, and it was just beautiful, and it was just like, all right, I just pulled forward. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's what every other framework has tried to be. I truly feel like God nowadays. Like, I just do all the time. The ataraxy has been unbelievable. It just pours down my shoulders in storms for hours at a time. Uh, I mean, everything I ever wished a framework could be is encapsulated by this framework. It is a master class in what I've been trying to do, and it's very interesting
Yeah.
because I can feel, as the afterglow slips away, I can feel that now I am no longer cradled by sub one, and I can feel that all of these efforts, all of this is now held up entirely on my shoulders. And if I forget, and it's gone. And that's a weird feeling.
Yeah. One day you wake up. Well, what was that thing I was thinking about yesterday?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, that was literally this morning. This morning, that happened to me. This morning was not a good morning for the family. And I switched it up halfway through the day, and managed to get back on it just as good as I was the day before. But it was like, I lost it. For the first time in weeks, I lost it. And it's so weird. Something that is so integral to you as a person can just be lost like that. Very, very fascinating.
I know that at the it was right at the peak of the afterglow, and right when it was gonna go away, I got COVID, and that definitely slowed my frameworking down, put it to a not a halt, but
Yeah, dude.
put some off, put
I'll
some
put it this way:
roadblocks.
whenever I got COVID, I got halted so bad. My framework progress got halted, stomped on so bad. It sent me into like a framework dark ages. Like,
Well, okay, I don't know if I'm there yet, but